It's always been a great TV sport. You are basically staring at the face of the competitor for 20 consecutive minutes.
You try to disassociate yourself with all of those fans that are going crazy.
Once you throw a ball down the lane and you get that strike, it's an impossible feeling to describe.
He needs a strike or a spare for history.
I say this all the time, bowling is a beautiful game, but what makes it exciting is that people are going to watch you do it.
Opening jacks.
If no one's watching you bowl, then what's the difference between, bowling on the Pro Tour or bowling at home in a practice session?
One of the greatest things about bowling is everyone can do it. And they can relate to what we do as professionals. But my bowling is different than when you walk in and you get a couple of beers and you go down there and you're taking little Flintstone steps and you're just barely throwing. That's not sport bowling.
On the professional level, it is an extremely complicated game. We're talking copious amounts of physics. Chemistry that go into a bowling ball that you have to learn. It's the most difficult game in the world.
Scoring environment in bowling is, I think, where most of the viewers are a little bit confused. Because they go in and they watch their scratch league locally and 25 guys in the place average 230. Nobody's ever averaged 230 on the PBA Tour for a year, ever. Well, what makes those guys better than the people that I'm watching? They're bowling higher scores. What's the playing field?
To make things even more difficult, that environment is constantly changing. Because oil is a physical substance, well, the bowling ball is affecting the position of the oil. So the best way to truly describe it is imagine you and I step up on the first hole of a golf course and I go first. And I know the bunker is on the left and the water is on the right and the green is right in the middle. I play the hole, I execute it, I get a par. Now it's your turn to come up, and now I've just changed all of the environment, but you don't know it. So you think the bunker's on the left and the water's on the right, but now I've changed the water to the left, the bunker right in the middle of the fairway. Now the optimum place to throw or hit the ball is to the right side, but you don't know it. You hit the ball down the middle thinking it's a great shot. Oops, sorry, we now have a bunker there. That's what makes bowling incredibly difficult.
In our modern world, it is often thought of as a sport laden with tradition, and bowling truly does have a rich heritage, a lineage that it is said stretches back to ancient Egypt. But along with its substantial history comes a legacy of progress. Much has changed over the years, not the least of which has been the preferred method to move the ball down the lane. Today, it is the two-handed approach that is trending, and for good reason. Jason Belmonte, a phenom who at 34 set the record for most major tournament wins in the PBA's half-a-century history, has proven, beyond a shadow of a doubt, its effectiveness.
The leader of the two-hand revolution is now on your Mount Rushmore of professional bowling.
And as it turns out, the Australian superstar's affinity for the unorthodox is a trait. Many giants of the sport have shared.
Don Carter was like the original superstar of bowling, and he was kind of one of the fathers of the PBA. And he had a unique style. He had a bent elbow style of release that was, different from what people were taught, to have a straight arm swing. And then in the 70s, a guy came along named Mark Roth, who threw the ball faster and hit the pins harder. And he turned the ball and hooked it more than anyone had ever seen before. And the way I like to describe Belmonte is he's kind of a combination of Don Carter and Mark Roth. He's really kind of a transcendent figure in our sport.
As commissioner now of the PBA, probably a little bit of a traditionalist, but you got this two-handed bowler. Was that an adjustment for you?
Absolutely, absolutely. I was someone that grew up loving the PBA, watching the PBA, wanting more respect for professional bowling, believing that it was the best sport that there ever has been. When I first started hearing about people throwing it with two hands and videos started swirling around, my initial reaction was, the game has gone down the drain. The bowlers, the bowling balls and the way the lanes are oiled and the lane surfaces and everything's conspiring to take away everything that we hold dear in what bowling is. But I'm a fairly open-minded person, and I remember watching Belmonte at the Masters. That's when I changed, and I said, no, this kid is great. When you've been watching bowling for your whole life, and all of a sudden one person's strikes are louder than everybody else's, and everyone's heads turn to see what that is, you say, wait a minute, I think I may have seen the future.
As soon as that telecast is over, I've got chills, and I looked at my mom and said, Mom, that's what I'm gonna do for a living, and I'm gonna beat Earl Anthony on TV.
My father, Guppy Troop, he was a pro on tour. I grew up wanting to be a professional bowler like my dad. As a kid, I was running around the bowling center begging for quarters. Even the guys on tour now, I used to beg them for money back in the day as a kid.
Did most of those guys give you the quarters, or did they?
Some of them would give me quarters, but you best believe nobody's giving me quarters now because I'm taking money from them.
What about the outfit?
I mean, this is definitely the outfit. My father, he had the wild pants back in the day in the 80s, and I kind of got my style from him a little bit.
My dad bowled a little bit on tour back in the late 80s, early 90s. He's owned a bowling center since 1998. I started bowling when I could walk.
Growing up, I just wanted to be around my dad all the time, and he bowled leagues. I think that's the story you might hear a lot from bowlers, because that's how it kind of works out.
I was watching the bowling telecast in my mom and my dad's bowling center, and I was eating a burger.
They had a bowling center.
They did. They owned a bowling center. So
that was important.
Yeah, 16-lane center in Mount Pleasant, Texas is where I grew up, and without that, of course, then I didn't have the opportunity. But I was watching Earl Anthony on television that day, and they were talking so high of him that it just got me intrigued. And here I had bowling lanes right behind me. I could go bowling anytime I wanted, but now I'm watching the pros do it. And as soon as that telecast is over, I've got chills, and I looked at my mom and said, Mom, that's what I'm gonna do for a living, and I'm gonna beat Earl Anthony on
That's
TV.
interesting.
Luckily for me, I'm 18 years old. My very first game on television was against the great Earl Anthony. It was exactly like I scripted it at 13. I did beat him that day, yes.
Did you feel bad about that?
No, sir.
How important is it for the kids to watch and say, what you did, I want to do that?
It's so important. It's exactly how I got into the game. In fact, Belmonte told me one time on an airplane, he said, Norm, you're the reason that I bowl. I watched you hook that ball on television and I thought, there's nothing better than this. So yeah, it was astounding to hear that from him, but I had to take myself back and say, wait a minute, this is just history repeating itself. I did the same thing with Earl. I see these kids now, they're looking up to Belmonte, they're doing the same exact thing.
I rolled my first ball on my own when I was 18 months old. So the idea of using one hand, a traditional style, when I was so little wasn't really an option. So I kind of thought, well, if I can't use one, I'll use two so I can bowl. And then every year I would still be a little too little to hold it with one hand like a traditional player, so I would continue to use two. And then it was soon very clear to me that this is how I'm going to bowl. I'm having fun, I'm getting pretty good at it. And my parents at the time were not bowlers. They built a bowling center in my hometown a couple of weeks after I was born. And the fact that they had never thrown a ball down the lane was probably a blessing in disguise, because they would never coach me. They would never try to change me. They just saw this little boy bowling the way that he was, happy, which is perfect because we're really busy here at work.
It's different to a point, and it's becoming more popular. And probably it's going to end up 70% of the young bowlers are going to be imitating you. How does that make you feel?
I mean, it feels very odd, but in a good way. You know, I've never understood why there's such a polarizing view towards it. And maybe it's because it's just what I know, but there are traditional players with a range of different, styles and techniques and swing types and release types and footwork, and everyone's kind of very unique. And I see the way that I play just being another uniqueness. It's still bowling. One of the things I'm probably most proud of, though, is that I kind of stuck to my guns as a little kid.
It's a good time for bowling, and there's more characters in the sport now. Like, they love it whenever I get on TV and pick it out. It's a sports entertainment.
Bowling, it was one of the first sports ever on TV. Milton Berle hosted a bowling TV show at the advent of television, because the set for bowling, it's contained. It's not like golf where you need cameras all over a golf course, or the number of cameras necessary to shoot a football game or a baseball game even. You could put one camera behind the bowlers and one facing them and shoot a great sporting event. And so it was ready-made for TV, both as a game show and as a sport. What ABC did, taking the PBA, working with the founder of the PBA, Eddie Elias, is they made it a legitimate sport with consequences and exposure that brought respect to the game and brought respect to the greatest bowlers in the world.
Not only did it bring respect, but also a windfall. During the 1960s, Don Carter became the first athlete to sign $1 million endorsement deal. Escalating fortunes followed bowlers for 2 decades. But the 1980s saw that trend begin to reverse. And by the 2012-2013 season, the average winnings for those in the top 10 of the PBA Tour was around $155,000.
Well, I think what hurt bowling the most is just the times. There was only 3-4 channels back then. Bowling was on, you're on 25% of the channels, you have a better chance to get bigger ratings. Now there's just a million things to watch on TV. It's hard for a lot of sports to grab those ratings.
And I wondered why. Why in the world is every sport going crazy with contracts and guaranteed deals, incentives, and bowling, we were going down. There are, goodness, a myriad of different reasons, but I look at the advent of technology in the sports, making all other sports more viewable and more fun to watch.
I've been on the tour for 14 years, and the deal with Fox is the best thing that's ever happened to us in that time. Some of the technology that we have incorporated in the shows now gives the viewing audience a little bit different look.
With technology, we're now going to show the oil on the lanes. We're going to put a blue dye on there so you can see. Now we have the shot tracer, which shows where your ball's going. They leave it there and say, this is its intended line, you know? When we make a big move or a strategy change, it's right there. It's in black and white. Beforehand, you just couldn't see it as well. You may not even notice when a guy was making a big change and something that was risky on the player's part. Well, now you see that risk right out there. It's just outlined for you.
Oh, yeah.
There you go. The savvy Duke has done it again. It doesn't matter what patterns you throw at him right now. He's going to take care of business.
There's a complete rejuvenation in the PBA Tour due to our relationship with Fox. More bowling on television, more live bowling on television, enhanced production of the shows, probably even most significantly, more re-airs of our shows. And Fox has seen the value of bowling as evergreen content, really, for their networks. And when more and more people become exposed to our players and the style of play on the PBA Tour, there's more and more interest, and the players are more excited, and the fans are more excited. And so now you have everybody ramped up, and an already great sport becomes even better.
It's a good time for bowling, and there's more characters in the sport now. Like, they love it whenever I get on TV and pick it out. It's a sports entertainment, no matter what sport it is.
Entertainment is
yeah,
right.
I mean, that's what it's about. Like, I mean, we're bowling on television. Yeah, we're bowling, but I mean, you need to have a good time and put on a show for the fans too.
I think as you develop in your career, every level of achievement that you reach comes more and more responsibility on how do you intend to utilize that quote-unquote fame.
In the NFL, we've been fortunate. You're watching Tom Brady. Everybody's calling him the GOAT.
Yeah.
Tiger Woods, not too long ago. We got to see it. You are seeing it right now playing out in front of your eyes in Jason Belmonte.
The Tiger Woods of bowling. With that goes a lot of responsibility. It's almost like leading the charge back and getting bowling as popular as it was one time, maybe even more popular, with you and television. Is that a winning combination?
I mean, I would like to hope so. I completely understand the responsibility of my role. And it's not just to, you know, step up and throw the ball and sit down. I think I have a responsibility to the best of my ability, make bowling as entertaining as possible, and to do what I can to express, you know, the love I have for this game and the want that I have for this game to grow. I think as you develop in your career, every level of achievement that you reach comes more and more responsibility on how do you intend to utilize that quote-unquote fame, not just for your personal benefit, but, you know, to give back to a sport that has given us so much. I know I have a platform that can reach many more people outside of our industry, and my goal is to infect that populace into bowling and show them what they're missing out on. It's like going on a roller coaster. I can tell you it's fun and it's fast and, you know, it'll scare you, but until you sit in that roller coaster and ride it for yourself, you'll never truly know. And I think that's my role, is to let everyone in on the roller coaster of bowling.
He's the greatest! He's the greatest!
How important is emotion when you can't get up or down during the course of the event?
If you'll watch, when we're playing on television, we go right lane, left lane. I allow myself to get emotional and to show excitement on the left lane, because then you're going to sit while the other guy gets up. I will not allow it on the right lane because I don't want to be jacked up. If you're jacked up, you can throw it right through the ceiling and never know it. It's the same as the golfers hitting it over the green because, you know, it's Sunday afternoon.
When you release the ball, do you know from the feel it's going to be a strike?
It depends on how lined up you are. Like, for instance, if you throw 2 or 3 shots and you know, yes, sir, I know what to do. If I make my shot, you know. You still can get bad breaks. Those pins aren't set exactly right, then you can have an anomaly in carry where your best shots don't strike and your worst ones do. So there are things, yes, but we know just like anything else. A golfer knows right here, he doesn't have to look up. And we know right here, we don't have to look up. We're just interested. We just want to see.
When things are going well for a bowler, it can be tempting to think of the sport as a black and white endeavor. Generate the optimal angle of attack, nail a strike, repeat. But humans are not perfect. Each lane is different, and it is in those quirks, especially the ones not apparent to the naked eye, that the fascinating nuance of this great game plays out. Even with advances in tech aimed at pulling the curtain back, so much remains invisible to those that have not put in the time to see. But if you've ever been to a bowling match, there's one aspect of its nature that is impossible not to notice. Spectators that will accept nothing less than to create an unrelenting and impactful positive vibe.
What they can do for you, what the fans can do for you, they knock more pins down for me than I could do on my own. You get 150, 200 people in the same building rooting your ball on. You think it doesn't matter? I'll argue with it. I'll say, yeah, nobody touched that ball or those pins, but it mattered.